Okay, so you can do your ridge review this week that talks about vertex formula of quadratics and absolute values. So we have to remember that there is a vertex formula, kind of parent function we call it, or pattern that we're going to use. And the first two are absolute value equations. So it is f of x. This follows the format x minus h plus k. And I always say, notice the default is a minus sign. So basically h and k are your ordered pair for the vertex of your absolute value equation. So if I look at this first problem here, and these are changed from what you have on your ridge review, but x minus 6, since the default here is negative, that means the x coordinate is 6. And the y coordinate, since there's no plus or minus there, is 0. So when it says explain the translation, I'll type this, you would say, oops, you'd say you need a bigger font. You would say that the graph of the equation is translated 6 spaces, not spaced, spaces to the right. Doesn't go up and down anything because there's no k there. If we look at the next one now, okay, remember, the default is negative h. So since this says positive 2, that means my x value for this one of the vertex is negative 2, because it would be x minus negative 2. The y value of the vertex would be positive 4, sorry, negative 4, because the default is positive, so that's negative. So explain how the graph of it would change. Name my text box again, okay? The graph of the equation, you could also call it a function, I guess, is translated 2 spaces to the left and down 4 spaces. You'll also notice, we'll get to it later, there's no vertical shift at all. If there was a number, since this is like an invisible 1, if there was number here greater than 1, say 2 or 3, this would have a vertical stretch. And if it was a number of less than 1, like a fraction, it would have vertical shrink. Okay, next problem, vertex form. There is a vertex form. I'm going to move this box just a little bit. I have to do completing the square on this one. And I will admit, completing the square is not my strong suit. So I'm going to try and go through all the work, but I wrote out my little cheat sheet behind here if I needed to. So vertex formula is x minus h squared plus k. So like before, this is going to be the x value for the vertex, x coordinate for the vertex. This is the y value for the vertex. So let's see if I can do this. You're starting with the equation f of x equals 6x squared plus 72x plus 210. Because you want vertex form, you're going to have to use completing the square. I know a lot of you don't like completing the square. So the first thing you need to do to complete the square is you need just this part on one side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract 210 from both sides. And I'm getting negative 210 equals 6x squared plus, it should be 72x. Now, leave the left side alone. From the right side, I'm going to factor out the leading coefficient, meaning if I factor out the 6, I am left with x squared plus 12x okay? Now, in order to complete the square, I need to put in a number here. We're talking about completing the square. We need this to be a square, like this square, that's a square. Okay, so I need to find the number that's going to work here. So what you do is basically you take half of this term, half of 12 is 6, and you square that, and you get 36. Now, you can't just add 36 to one side without adding it to the other, unless you do this odd thing, where you add 36 and you minus 36. That obviously, if I combined them, is going to take you to 0. We're not going to do that. But if I did, I would. So negative 210 equals 6. Now I'm going to use this part here. I'm going to leave that negative 36 alone for right now. I'm going to use this part here, basically FOIL. X plus 6 plus 6, correct? That'd be x squared plus 6x plus 6x is 12x. And 6 times 6 is 36. I know I have that negative 36 there hanging on. We'll get to that. So negative 210 equals 6 times x plus 6 squared, okay, minus 36. Now, I'm going to want to deal with that, but for right now, okay, this was all, actually I should have put this better. This should have all been in a bracket. This should have all been in a bracket. I want to break this out of the bracket. So in order to do that, remember that would have been distributing 6 times negative 36. So 6 times 36, and this is going to be negative, is going to be negative 260. Okay, so basically this was in the bracket that 6 was being multiplied by all of that. I want to separate it out because I need to bring this 210 back over. Okay, so I did the 36 times 6. I add 210 to both sides, and I get f of x equals 6 times x plus 6 squared minus 6. Now remember, okay, so 6, that matches, and that matches. But I needed to write it in vertex form, and I also needed to find the vertex. Since the default here is negative, since I have positive, that means my x value is negative 6. Okay? And my y value is negative 6. And I made a mistake here. This would not be the right equation anyway, because there's no 6 in front. I didn't catch that. So f is actually the only equation that is even right. And this has the correct vertex, but it does not have the 6 in front. I know that's very confusing. You might also have to look up some videos also on completing the square, or ask me about it in class some more. But that is how to do problem 4. Next one. This is really kind of easy. Okay? So remember these ones get really easy. X minus h squared plus k. The fact that there's a 3 there just means that it's going to be narrower. It's going to have vertical stretch, but I'm not going to even need that because all of these have 4 different vertexes. So the default is negative, so it's 2. It should be plus a number, it's minus a number, so it's 4. So I'm looking for a vertex of 2, negative 4. Oh, that could be it. That's not 2, that's not 2, that's 2, and that looks like it's positive 4. So it definitely is what I'm going to call number 1. So those are pretty easy to find. Completing the square is more difficult. Those are pretty easy to find if I understand vertex formula. The other thing that you're asked is to write some equations in vertex formula. So if you're doing absolute value, that's the main function, x minus h squared plus k if you're doing quadratic. If you're asked for vertical stretch, that means, we talked about this, it's like you have a rubber band and you're stretching it as you pull up. So this number increases. It has to be greater than 1. So vertical stretch, 2 or 4, something like that. If I'm doing vertical shrink, it's a number less than 1, 1/2. Okay? 3/4. Okay? But I should say it's less than the absolute value because, for instance, -5, while -5 is greater than 1, what that would really do is make my graph open downwards, but it would have vertical stretch. It would be closer together because the absolute value of -5 is greater. So I hope that that helps you. I hope that the sound lasted on this entire video, and you can now do your ridge review.